In the stillness of a modern night, you close your eyes and drift through time. Envision the world centuries ago, a world lit only by fire. Moonlight silvers the thatched roofs of distant villages, and the darkness beyond is vast and deep. There are no electric lights, no hum of traffic or glow of smartphones, only the chirr of crickets and the occasional howl of a far-off wolf. A snowy medieval winter in February, peasants warm themselves by a cottage fire, while others tend to chores outside. In a small cottage nestled at the edge of an ancient forest, a single tallow candle gutters in the window. Its flame reveals a humble scene: rough wooden walls, a dirt floor, and a family huddled by a faintly glowing hearth. Outside, the night air is cold and carries the smoke of many hearth fires, each a tiny beacon of warmth in an age of deep dark. As you float above this sleeping medieval hamlet, a gentle church bell chimes midnight from somewhere beyond the hills. The sound is muffled, as if wrapped in the mist of centuries. You breathe in the air of this bygone era. It smells of wood smoke, damp earth, and a life much different from our own. Now allow yourself to slip further into this world. With each breath, the present day fades away. The comforts of modern life, soft beds, hot showers, stocked refrigerators, vanish like mirages. In their place, a harsher reality emerges, softened only by the veil of time and our quiet narration. We are embarking on a tranquil journey into the heart of the Middle Ages, a journey through the daily rhythms and struggles of people long ago. This will not be a journey of kings and queens, of knights in shining armor, jousting in tournaments, or at least, not only that. It will be, above all, a journey into everyday life, into the dawn to dusk reality that ordinary folk faced in medieval times. We will wander through villages and fields, through desert sands and bustling bazaars, across steppes and into starlit camps. We will witness, gently and without judgment, how people toiled, loved, and survived in a world without modern comforts. And as we go, you may soon understand why a person from today, accustomed to our conveniences and safety, might struggle to last even a single day in that world. This narrative unfolds slowly, in soft tones meant to ease you into rest. Though the realities of medieval life were often harsh, we will explore them calmly, like an old story told by the fireside. As we move from one land to another, from sunrise to moonrise, imagine that you are a silent observer, or perhaps a traveler, moving unseen through the centuries. Picture torchlight flickering on the walls of a walled town at dusk, and dawn's first rays peeking over distant mountains onto farmlands shrouded in mist. Hear the roosters crowing in a farmyard at daybreak, the creak of wooden cartwheels along a rutted track, the murmur of prayers in a stone chapel at twilight. Feel the rough wool of homespun, clothes against your skin, and the bite of chill morning air on your face. The scenes will change, but throughout, you will sense a common thread: the resilience of pre-modern people, and the many trials they endured daily. Life in those days could be beautiful in its own way, marked by the rhythms of nature and community. There were festivals on the village green, spring mornings filled with birdsong, summer twilights when families gathered to share simple meals. But life was also, as one philosopher famously put it, nasty, brutish, and short for many. Dangers lurked in the dark: disease, hunger, hardship. Today, we worry about emails and traffic jams. Then, people worried about surviving the week, about having enough to eat when the harvest ran thin, or about the next band of raiders appearing on the horizon. It was a world where the average person's existence was bound to the land and the seasons, and every comfort we take for granted had to be crafted by hand or not exist at all. Yet, even in that hard existence, people found meaning and moments of joy. A mother in a medieval cottage might sing a tender lullaby to her child by the fire, even as the wind howled outside through the cracks in the wooden shutters. Neighbours at day's end might share a cup of weak ale and trade stories, finding laughter despite their exhaustion. The human spirit endured and even flourished in small ways amidst adversity. In our journey, we will honour those small moments too, the flickers of light in the long medieval night. So, let the outside world fade completely now. Surrender to the gentle pull of the past. We begin our travel in time, our meditative walk through history. The night is at its deepest just before dawn. In the east, the sky is just starting to lighten. A rooster crows, and a new day, a day centuries ago, is about to begin. Our first destination awaits in the far Orient, where the morning mist hangs low over rice fields. Prepare to awaken in a different age, as the first light of sunrise beckons us into the dim lantern light of history. Chapter 2. Dawn in the East. A village awakens. The first light of day finds us in a misty valley, deep in the eastern reaches of the medieval world. As the sky grows pale orange, a small farming village in Song Dynasty China begins to stir. Roosters crow from a dozen humble homesteads, their calls echoing off bamboo groves. In one thatched house with mud brick walls, a farmer and his family awaken on their plank bed. The air is cool and moist. Their breaths make faint clouds in the dawn chill. Inside the one-room hut, the farmer's wife coaxes a small flame to life in the clay stove, blowing gently on last night's embers until new kindling catches fire. A thin trail of smoke rises through a hole in the roof. Soon, the soft smell of rice porridge begins to waft through the dim interior. There is no furniture to speak of, just a couple of wooden stools, some straw mats, and baskets of tools. The family's few chickens cluck under the raised corner of the house, and a pig roots around just outside the door. Life here is simple and spare, tied intimately to the earth and the break of day. By the faint light, the farmer, whom we'll call Zhang, pulls on a coarse cotton tunic and trousers. Both are fraying and patched many times. His hands are calloused. The dirt of the fields is ingrained in the deep lines of his palms. His wife ties her long hair back with a cloth and wraps a worn shawl around her shoulders before stepping outside to draw water from the village well. Dew beads on the grass, and the morning fog clings to the terraced rice paddies just beyond the huts. Zhang's eldest son, barely 14, yawns and stretches. Despite his youth, he will work the fields alongside his father today, as he has since he could carry a hoe. In this era, childhood is brief. By their early teens, most children are already laboring like adults. Zhang's younger daughter, only 7, helps her mother stoke the cooking fire and rinse out clay bowls for breakfast. There is no idle time. Every member of the family has duties, from sun-up to sundown. They eat their meager dawn meal quietly. Congee, a thin rice gruel, fills each bowl. It's warm and soothing but very plain. Salt or a few chopped green shoots from the kitchen garden add a hint of flavour. Meat is rare on ordinary days. Perhaps on a festival they might taste a bit of pork or fish, but this morning it's just porridge. Still, they are grateful to have rice at all. In some seasons, food runs desperately short. If the harvest is poor or taxes heavy, the family must tighten their belts. The memory of a famine a few years ago still haunts the village elders. A drought had withered the crops, and many went hungry. Some even foraged for roots and wild leaves in the hills to survive. The imperial government stores grain in ever-normal granaries to stabilize supply, but aid might not reach every village in time when famine strikes. For common folk like the Zhangs, life can teeter on the edge of starvation whenever nature is cruel. As the sun's golden disk peaks over distant mountains, father and son head out to the fields, carrying hoes across their shoulders. A light mist rises from the flooded rice paddies where green shoots poke through the water's surface. The morning chorus of insects and frogs begins as the day warms. Wading into ankle-deep water, Zhang feels mud seeping between his toes. He and the boy begin the back-breaking task of weeding the paddy, pulling unwanted plants from around the tender rice shoots. Elsewhere, neighbors guide water buffaloes to plow a drier plot of land for planting millet. The animals' broad hooves and the wooden plowshare churn the earth, releasing a rich scent of soil. It's hard, monotonous work, but everyone in the village knows that diligent labor now means food for later. The sun climbs higher, burning away the fog and beginning to bake the fields. Soon, sweat beads on Zhang's forehead. He pauses to wipe it with a ragged sleeve and glances at his son, who is already tanned a deep brown from long days under the sky. The boy's stomach grumbles audibly. Thin rice porridge does not last long for a growing youth doing heavy labor. Back in the village, the wife tends a small plot of vegetables behind the house. She kneels in the dirt, weeding around rows of cabbages and beans. A toddler, her sister's child, recently orphaned and taken in, plays at her side, stacking little stones. The woman keeps a watchful eye on the little one as she works. In this era, families are large and often extended. It's common to care for a relative's children if needed. Many children do not survive past infancy. Sadly, illnesses that modern medicine easily cures can carry off the young with frightening speed here. A fever, a bout of diarrhea from tainted water, or a simple infection might be a death sentence. Indeed, perhaps 1 in 3 children born in such villages never reach adulthood. The Zhangs themselves have laid to rest 2 babies over the years. Tiny graves marked by wooden prayer tablets on a nearby hillside. Each loss was a heavy blow, especially to the mother. But in a world without vaccines or understanding of germs, such tragedies are cruelly common. The family carries on, honoring the departed in their ancestral rites and pouring out a small offering of rice wine at New Year in their memory. Despite these hardships, the village finds ways to cherish life's small joys. As the day advances towards noon, you notice a group of children running barefoot between the houses, laughing as they chase a straw ball. Their giggles are bright in the late morning air. An old man sits under the shade of a gnarled banyan tree, whittling a piece of wood into the shape of a little ox for one of the kids. He has a long white beard and a face creased like dried apple skin. Too aged to labor in the paddies, he contributes by mending tools and minding the children while the others work. He hums a folk song softly, a melody about the coming of spring. Nearby, 2 women scrub laundry in a stream, chatting quietly about their families. They dip clothes in the water and then beat them against smooth stones to knock out the dirt. A rhythmic splash thump that forms a steady accompaniment to their conversation. Occasionally, this humble village is brightened by celebrations that relieve the monotony of work. For instance, during the New Year festival in early spring, The peasants hang simple paper lanterns at their doorways and make an offering at the small shrine by the old elm tree, praying for a good harvest and health. The children practice a little dragon dance, using a makeshift dragon crafted from cloth and bamboo, while their parents clap in time to drum beats made on overturned buckets. There is laughter, rare treats of sweet rice cakes shared among neighbors, and for one day even the Lord's tax collector stays away. At night, families gather around crackling bonfires in the fields and release tiny oil lamps on the pond, watching as they drift like fallen stars on the water's surface. A modern onlooker would find magic in these moments of communal joy, a stark contrast to the toil and hardship that fill most days. It is a reminder that even in a life full of challenges, people find time to celebrate and hope for a better tomorrow. Our time in this eastern village is drawing to a close. The day will march on with more labor until dusk, and the cycle will repeat all over again come dawn. But already, the sun above has begun its slow arc westward. We will follow it now, our journey moving with the course of the day. Leaving the Jung family to their fields and fortunes, we drift onward. The warm hues of late afternoon begin to glow in the sky as we travel far beyond these emerald rice terraces. Ahead, beyond deserts and mountains, new lands and cultures await. The same sun that bakes the rice paddies here will soon peer down upon bustling bazaars and golden dunes. Let us gently take our leave of the East and step across the continents toward the great realms of the medieval Islamic world, where the day's heat is at its height and life takes on a different cadence under the noonday sun. Chapter 3. Under the desert sun, midday in the Caliph's city. The scene shifts westward, and the gentle morning of the east gives way to the blazing noon of the Middle East. Under a nearly white-hot sun, the city of Baghdad swelters. It is the high point of the Islamic Golden Age, and Baghdad is among the largest, most splendid cities on earth, home to perhaps 1 million souls in these medieval centuries. At this hour, the narrow streets of the bazaar are alive with activity and color. Booths and stalls line the dusty lanes, sheltered by woven reed mats that cast dappled shade. Merchants in flowing robes call out their wares, sacks of spices from India, shimmering silk bolts from China, piles of dates and figs, brass lamps and leather goods. The air is thick with a tapestry of scents. Cardamom and cumin mingle with the musk of animals and the sweat of countless bodies pressed together. A water seller winds through the crowd, ringing a bell and carrying a goatskin of precious water on his back. His cry of Ya Atshan, "O thirsty one," offers relief to those wilting in the heat for a small coin. Overhead, the sky is a brazen blue, and not a cloud offers mercy from the sun's glare. It is midday in the city of peace, and the year could be 1000 AD, give or take, though time here seems less important than place, for the rhythms of life in these streets have remained much the same across generations. A 13th century illustration depicts a bustling slave market in a Middle Eastern town, where lives are bought and sold as part of everyday commerce. Under an arched arcade at the edge of the market square, a cluster of people gathers around an auctioneer. He stands on a wooden platform, shouting praises of the merchandise he is selling. Human beings. A slave market is underway. A teenage boy with downcast eyes and shackled wrists is prodded forward to be sold as a household servant. Nearby, a woman in a faded blue dress holds a small child's hand tightly. Both have been taken far from their homeland by traders, and now await their fate. The crowd appraises them dispassionately. In this society, slavery is an accepted institution. Prisoners of war, captured nomads, or people born into bondage end up in these markets. A wealthy buyer might purchase the boy for labor in the stables or fields, or perhaps as an apprentice in a workshop. The woman and her child might be bought by a merchant's household to serve in the kitchen or to clean. Though Islam encourages kindness to slaves and allows opportunities for manumission, the reality is that these people have little control over their lives. It's a sobering sight for a modern observer. We recoil at the idea of humans as property, but here it is woven into the fabric of the economy. The auctioneer's voice drones on in the heat, and a few coins exchange hands. By early afternoon, the new owners will lead their purchases away, and the market will fold up until the next week. Life, in medieval times, can be merciless in ways we today can barely imagine. Moving past the slave market, you wander through the souk, bazaar. The crowd is a tapestry of cultures and classes. You see Arab nobles in fine silk robes trimmed with damask, their beards perfumed with oils, walking with an almost languid grace despite the heat. Close behind, their African bodyguards, tall men with spears and curved swords, clear the way. A one-eyed beggar crouches by a mosque doorway, mumbling a prayer and holding out a clay bowl for alms. Two turbaned scholars stride by, engaged in lively debate, likely about a point of law or philosophy, gesturing with ink-stained fingers. A Jewish silk merchant in a cap converses in Arabic with a Persian customer over a bolt of cloth, while a Greek-speaking scribe haggles for parchment at a nearby stall. Baghdad is cosmopolitan, a crossroads of civilizations. Under the Abbasid caliphs, it drew talent and knowledge from every corner of the Muslim world and beyond. In the bookstores of the main street, you could find works of Aristotle and Plato translated into Arabic, or the latest treatises on mathematics and medicine by scholars like Al-Khwarizmi and Ibn Sina, Avicenna. But such lofty matters are far from the minds of most toiling inhabitants at this moment. They are more concerned with enduring the searing heat and earning their daily bread. The call to prayer rings out suddenly above the din. From the lofty minaret of the grand mosque, a muezzin's melodic voice echoes, Allahu Akbar. In an instant, many in the marketplace pause their business. It is the zuhr, the midday prayer time. Shopkeepers pull gauzy curtains across their stalls, or simply leave their goods in the care of a neighbor, trusting in mutual respect and the fear of God to prevent theft. A carpet seller unfurls a small rug right there by his booth, turns to face the holy city of Mecca, and begins to pray, bowing and prostrating in rhythm with others doing the same. The noblemen from before had retreated to a shaded courtyard where they can perform ablutions, washing hands, face and feet before their prayers. Even some of the beggars manage to stand and murmur prayers, though they have no clean water to wash with. In this devout society, the rhythm of daily prayers punctuates life and offers a moment of respite and reflection, even in the bustling city. For a few minutes, a relative hush falls over parts of the bazaar, broken only by the rustling of pigeons' wings and distant donkey brays. Not everyone prays. A group of slave porters, strong men with sun-darkened skin, take the opportunity to rest. Sitting on their heels in a patch of shade, they wipe sweat from their brows and share a few dates from a pouch, too exhausted to walk to the mosque. In a corner, a Bimaristan hospital continues its quiet work, prayer time or not. Through its doors, you glimpse rows of wooden beds and attendants moving between them. the Islamic world's hospitals are famous for, offering care to the sick regardless of wealth or status. Inside, robed physicians check patients' pulses and examine urine flasks by sunlight. They have studied the writings of Hippocrates and Galen, and more recent medical encyclopedias by Avicenna. Their treatments are advanced for the era: herbal remedies, carefully measured diets, even rudimentary surgeries. Yet, without modern knowledge of germs or effective antiseptics, many ailments run unchecked. In one cot lies a man writhing with a fever that has stained his skin with dark splotches. By his side, a doctor shakes his head gravely. One cannot know it here, but you recognize the signs of bubonic plague, the great pestilence that will in time ravage cities from Asia to Europe. Indeed, centuries later, this very city will lose a large share of its people to the Black Death. Even now, common diseases take a heavy toll. In the cramped alleys behind the main market, sewage stagnates and breeds illness. Eye infections, dysentery, tuberculosis. These run rampant, especially among the poor. Child mortality in cities like this is brutally high, not much better than it was in rural villages. For every thriving scholar or merchant's child who survives to adulthood, another may have died in infancy from cholera or measles. The Bimaristan does what it can with the knowledge available, but many families will still bury children far too young. If you were suddenly dropped into this world, the heat and exposure alone would be a serious challenge. In these Middle Eastern summers, midday temperatures can soar to a gale. Modern people rely on air conditioning or at least electric fans. Here, there is no such relief. Natives have adapted their routines. Many will rest at midday, opening shops early in the morning, and then again in the late afternoon or evening when it's cooler. Homes of the well-off are designed with courtyards and fountains to promote airflow, and thick walls keep out some heat. But for the average person laboring under the sun, one simply has to endure. A contemporary traveler from temperate Europe often fainted or fell ill upon encountering the relentless sun of Arabia without acclimatization, though locals hardened by life here manage. You would need to cover up in loose, light garments and keep your head wrapped to avoid sunstroke. Water, too, is a constant concern. The city relies on the great Tigris River flowing nearby. Water carriers haul it in goat skins, and wealthier houses have ceramic jars of water, kept cool in the shade. But the water can carry diseases, and a newcomer might not have immunity to the local microbes. A single drink from a contaminated street cistern could bring on a debilitating bout of diarrhea or worse. There are other cultural adjustments a modern person would struggle with here. The language barrier. For one, the common tongue is a form of medieval Arabic, quite distinct from any English or other modern language you know, unless you've studied classical Arabic or happen to have a translation device, which, of course, wouldn't exist here. You'd be as good as mute and deaf in this crowd. The educated elite might also speak Persian, and traders use a smattering of languages, but your modern speech would be utterly alien. You'd have no easy way to ask for help, to bargain for food, or even to tell someone you're unwell. And in a place where social etiquette is strict, a wrong gesture or misunderstood word can lead to trouble. For example, a person from our time might inadvertently offend local customs, perhaps by not covering your hair, or by meeting the gaze of someone's wife in public. The breaches of modesty that could provoke anger. The society here is conservative and pious. Men and women have defined spaces. Many women, especially of respectable families, veil their hair and sometimes their faces in public. As a foreign-looking stranger, ignorant of these norms, you might be met with suspicion. Some might assume you're a spy from an enemy tribe or a supernatural omen. If you were unable to communicate or behave properly, a city guard could detain you for questioning, and the justice system was harsh. You wouldn't want to end up accused of being a Zanadiq, heretic, simply because you behaved oddly. As evening approaches, a Baghdadi family concludes their day. In a modest courtyard, shaded by date palms, a father and his sons sit on woven mats, eating a simple supper of lentil stew and flatbread, while the mother pours cool water from a clay jug for each of them. The city's intense heat has given way to a balmy dusk. They share stories of the day's business in the market and gossip about the caliph's latest edict, chuckling softly. Overhead, swallows dart through the purple sky catching insects, and from a neighboring roof comes the soft strumming of an oud as someone plays a gentle melody. The family spreads bedding on their flat rooftop to sleep under the open air, a common practice in these parts to escape the indoor heat. A modern visitor on a nearby roof might find this scene surprisingly peaceful. The silhouette of palm fronds against the starry sky, the distant murmur of the city winding down, and the comfort of a family's routine in a world so alien. In these quiet moments, Baghdad feels not so different from home. It's a place where parents love their children and people find contentment in a shared meal after a hard day. Such parallels might lull the traveler into forgetting, for a time, the many perils that lurk for the unwary here. We take leave of the Caliph's city as the daylight begins to mellow. The sun, which rose over the Far East and scorched its way across these Middle Eastern skies, now journeys further west. In its wake, the call to prayer will sound again, the Asr, or afternoon prayer, echoing from minarets as a reminder of faith amidst worldly struggles. We too shall follow the sun's path, heading into the late afternoon and onward to the lands of Europe, where the medieval day is entering its twilight hours. With a final glance at the Tigris glinting in the sunlight and the silhouette of Baghdad's city walls, we set our sights toward the west, where a different world of castles and villages awaits under the purpling sky. Chapter 4: Twilight in the West, Village Life and Labours. Now the sun carries us into the heart of medieval Europe, where it is late afternoon and the edge of dusk approaches. We find ourselves above a small village, nestled amid green fields and woodlands. This could be England or France around the 14th century. The details differ little, for rural life in much of Europe follows the same timeless patterns. Below us, thatched cottages cluster around a stone church and a dirt road. As we descend gently, the sounds of this world grow clear. The lowing of cattle being herded home from pasture, the shouts of swineherds corralling pigs out of the forest, the creaking of a wooden ox cart laden with hay. After a long day's toil, the villagers are beginning to wrap up their labours. The fields around the village show the fruits of that labour. Neat rows of wheat and barley stubble after the harvest, some fallow plots dotted with grazing sheep, and vegetable gardens behind each house. It's a picture of rustic tranquility, but one born of unending work and worry. On the road trudges a sunburnt man with a bundle of sticks on his back. His name is John Miller, a peasant serf tied to the local lord's manor. John's tunic is coarse and earth-stained. His feet are wrapped in scrap leather for shoes. He has been up since before dawn, working the Lord's fields with a hoe, and later chopping wood in the Lord's forest. Hence the bundle of sticks, his allowed share of kindling to take home. His shoulders sag with fatigue. By medieval standards, John is not unusual. In fact, around 85% of the people in Europe in the Middle Ages were peasants just like him, living in villages and laboring on the land. For these folk, life is a cycle of dawn to dusk toil, nasty, brutish, and short. If a modern person were to trade places with John, even for one day, the sheer physical exhaustion would be overwhelming. Consider, John's workday often started as early as 3 a.m. in the summer, when first light allowed field work, and continued until dusk. There are no weekends off, no 8-hour labor laws. Only the change of seasons brings variations in work, and winter's relative lull often means doing laborious repairs or indoor tasks instead. John passes by the village church, a modest stone chapel with a squat bell tower. The bell is ringing out for Vespers, the evening prayer. Its gentle toll urges the faithful to worship. John, bone-tired as he is, will still make his way to the church once he drops off his firewood. Not because he especially wants to, he'd likely rather collapse on a straw mat, but because attendance at Mass and obedience to Holy Mother Church is expected. The village priest, Father Bernard, keeps a close eye on his flock's piety. Skipping the required church services or failing to observe holy days could get a peasant in trouble, both spiritually and with the community. They've been taught since birth that God sees all and punishes sin. No one here dares test that, not after hearing the priest's sermons about sinners struck by sudden illness or misfortune as divine retribution. Besides, the church owns a portion of these lands and exacts its own tithe, a tax of 10% of one's produce, which they pay dutifully in grain or goods. It's wise not to anger the institution that controls your soul's fate, and also a chunk of your livelihood. As one popular maxim goes, those who labor pray through their labor, but still, laborers must also show up in church. John's cottage stands at the end of a row of similar wattle and daub huts. These homes are incredibly simple, even crude by our standards. His is basically a single-room shack, woven from sticks and plastered with mud and straw. There are no real windows, perhaps just a tiny opening or two, since glass is a luxury he's never seen. The thatched roof is leaky in heavy rains. Inside, a central fire pit on the earthen floor serves for cooking and warmth, but there is no chimney. The smoke from the fire hangs in the air and slowly seeps out through the thatch. The rafters are black with soot, and John's eyes often smart from the haze. One corner of the hut is sectioned off as a pen, where the family's precious animals, a scrawny cow and a few goats, live alongside the family at night. Their body warmth actually helps raise the temperature a bit, and they'll be safer from wolves in here. The floor is just packed dirt, strewn with straw, and furniture usually consists of a few stools, a trunk for bedding, and some cooking utensils. Bedding is typically riddled with bed bugs, lice, and other biting insects, and any candles made of oil and fat create a pungent aroma. At the end of the day, John, his wife, and their 2 surviving children unroll straw-filled mattresses or simply huddle under wool blankets on that dirt floor. Privacy is non-existent. They all share the one room with the animals. Fleas and lice are a constant torment. The bedding and clothing are infested, despite efforts to wash them in the stream occasionally. It's said that the average peasant bathes only twice in life, at birth and after death, which is an exaggeration, but not by much. In truth, people likely rinse off when they can, and might wash face and hands daily, but a full immersion bath is rare. Soap is homemade, lye-based, and harsh, Given the daily grime of farm work and the smokiness of the hut, John and his family carry a strong odor by modern standards. They don't particularly notice it. Everyone smells of sweat, dirt, and wood smoke. If you were to walk into this hut, the smell and smoke alone might drive you back out, eyes watering. This evening, John's wife Matilda is already home, tending a thin pottage over the fire, a stew of barley with a few carrots and onions from their garden. A tantalizing scent it is not. It's more or less the same bland stew they have eaten every day this week. If they're lucky, Matilda might have a bit of salted fish or a bone to throw in for flavor. Meat is scarce. The family's chickens provide some eggs, and once in a rare, while an older hen might be slaughtered for a feast, they cannot afford to kill their cow or goats. Those give milk and cheese from it, which are too valuable to lose. So, their diet is heavily bread-based, rye and barley bread, coarse and dark, supplemented by vegetable pottage. It's filling, if enough is available, but often not fully nourishing. John and Matilda are both a bit stunted in height and lean from years of hard work and occasional hunger. Many times they've had to tighten belts, like during the Great Famine some years back. 1315, 1317, when relentless rains rotted crops across northern Europe, and even lords went hungry. Old villagers still shudder recalling those years, when starving peasants were rumored to eat acorns, bark, even things which should not be eaten in desperation. Such horrors linger in communal memory. Even now, in a decent year, if the harvest fails locally or a lord raises the rent, this family could face hunger. There is no grocery store safety net. What they grow and store is what they eat. A modern person used to abundant food choices would be shocked by the monotonous, meagre fare at this medieval table, and might struggle physically with the coarse bread and roughage. John enters the hut and greets Matilda and the children. They sit on stools or the edge of the chest to eat their supper. Grace is said first, a brief thanks to God and the village's patron saint. The meal is quiet, except for slurping and a few murmured comments about the day's work. The children, a boy of 10 and a girl of 8, know better than to complain of the bland food. They've never known anything else. Besides, they are genuinely hungry. After a few moments, the boy excitedly mentions that he saw a traveling peddler arrive in the village today. This sparks a bit of conversation. A peddler brings the outside world's small luxuries, maybe tin pots, ribbons, or rare spices, like pepper if he's come far. The villagers don't get out much themselves. Most live and die within a few miles of where they were born. The wider world of distant cities, foreign countries, or pilgrimages to Jerusalem is beyond their horizon. The peddler's visit is a taste of that beyond. Perhaps tomorrow, if allowed, Matilda will take a look at his wares near the village green, eyeing simple needles or coloured threads that she can trade eggs for. Such bits of news brighten an otherwise hard existence. As dusk falls, the only illumination in the hut is the flicker of the hearth flames and a single tallow candle Matilda has lit. The candle sputters, its flame barely revealing the rafters above. It gives off an acrid smell of burning animal fat. Not pleasant, but they are long used to it. They cannot afford the fine beeswax candles that burn cleanly in the Lord's manor or the church. Tallow candles are cheap and crude, made from rendered beef fat, and they don't last long. In fact, to save money, most nights the family doesn't burn a candle at all and simply goes to bed shortly after sunset. But tonight, Matilda needs a bit of light to mend her son's tunic, which tore under the arm. By firelight, she threads a bone needle and uses her precious thimble, a small but prized tool, to push it through the tough cloth. The children huddle near the hearth, playing a quiet game of knuckle bones, jacks made from sheep, ankle bones, on the floor. John, for his part, takes a sip from a clay mug of ale, a thin, weak ale Matilda brewed from leftover barley. It's warm and sour, but safer to drink than water from the village well, which often tastes of iron and sometimes makes folks sick. Nearly everyone drinks this small ale daily, even the children, as the fermentation kills some of the harmful microbes that lurk in the water. Suddenly, there's a commotion outside. Through the open doorway, there is no true door, just a wooden shutter they cover at night. John hears raised voices by the road. He steps out into the twilight. Several neighbors have gathered and seem agitated. Under the oak tree at the center of the village, the Lord's bailiff, a stout, stern man on horseback, has a young peasant man by the arm. This unfortunate fellow, named Robert, is accused of poaching a deer from the Lord's forest. The bailiff displays a bloody deer carcass as evidence. Robert protests tearfully that he only found it already dead, a likely story. The other villagers stand silently. They know this is serious. Hunting rights are reserved for the nobility. A peasant killing game is a grave offense. The punishment could be harsh indeed. Perhaps a public whipping, a steep fine, which Robert cannot pay, or in some cases the stocks, or even mutilation, like having an ear cropped. Everyone knows of stories where poachers were hanged as thieves, though perhaps mercy will prevail with just a whipping. The bailiff announces that Robert will be held at the manor jail tonight and brought before the manorial court in the morning. 2 of the village men are ordered to escort him and the deer to the manor. As the small procession moves off, Robert's wife wails softly and is comforted by neighbors. John shakes his head grimly. He whispers a quick prayer, thanking God it isn't him this time. This is the harsh justice of their world, swift and severe, with little distinction between starvation-driven desperation and malicious criminality. A simple accusation could spiral into dire consequences, and punishments like branding or mutilation leave lifelong marks of shame. Quietly, the village resumes its evening routine. Darkness thickens. A few more candles glimmer in doorways, but mostly people rely on the moon and stars now. John returns inside, troubled by what he saw. He and Matilda say little as they prepare for bed. Matilda has finished, mending the tunic and rubs her eyes, tired from close work in dim light. The children are already dozing by the hearth, curled up together under a coarse wool blanket. John takes a moment to kneel and say his prayers, an Our Father, a Hail Mary, and a plea for protection through the night. In this age, the veil between the natural and supernatural feels thin. Many believe that night brings out restless spirits or ill-meaning fairies. At the very least, wolves or bandits could roam under cover of darkness. The sturdy oaken door of the cottage is bolted with a simple bar. It's more to keep out wild animals or drunks than any serious foe, but it gives a sense of security. Matilda places a bowl of water by the glowing embers, a folk custom to ward off wandering souls, or perhaps just to have water handy if a spark catches the thatch on fire. Lying down on their straw mattress, the family bundles together for warmth. Tonight, fortunately, is calm. In other times, their sleep might, or be interrupted by the alarms of medieval life. The church bell, clanging frantically to signal a fire or a call to arms if invaders, or feuding knights approach. Or perhaps the distant thunder of hooves and a red glow on the horizon, meaning some army or mercenary band is torching villages in the region, a sadly common occurrence during endless feudal wars. But on this night, no such terror comes. John's eyelids grow heavy, and soon he drifts into a weary, dreamless sleep. The village settles into silence, but for the chirp of crickets and the creaking of the cooling earth. One might wonder, what of the lords and ladies in their stone castles or manor halls? Did they live far better lives? It is true that medieval nobles ate finer foods and slept on raised feather beds, but even they lacked many comforts we take for granted. A lord's castle was grand but draughty and damp. Tapestries on the walls did only so much to cut the chill. In winter, nobles huddled under piles of furs, much like the peasants did with straw and wool. They enjoyed entertainment like minstrels and feasts. Yet those halls could be dangerous arenas of intrigue. A careless word at court might lead to a duel or falling out of favour. Noble women, draped in silk, might still die young in childbirth, just as peasant women did, for wealth was no guard against infection. And if a siege befell the castle, all the inhabitants, high-born and low, suffered hunger and fear together. The point is, even at the top of society, medieval life was precarious and uncomfortable by modern standards. The nobleman might avoid the back-breaking labour of the fields, but he risked his neck in battle or navigated treacherous politics daily. The lady in her solar private chamber might do embroidery instead of hauling water, but she had limited freedom, often betrothed and married off for alliance rather than love, and faced the constant peril of childbirth. So, whether in a mud hut or a monarch's keep, life in those times demanded a toughness and endurance that is hard for us to fathom. This realization puts in perspective how fortunate we are to have even the simplest modern conveniences. Our journey through this European village reveals how a person from today would struggle to last even a single day here. But even so, we have seen moments of tenderness and community amid the hardship. It is now twilight, and lamplight begins to twinkle in a few cottage windows, while overhead the first stars appear. With the village safely bedding down and night claiming the sky, we gently take our leave, rising up and away from John and Matilda's tiny home. They sleep the deep sleep of exhaustion, unaware that their world, so real and all-encompassing to them, has been but a brief chapter in our travels. Ahead, to the north, the horizon glows faintly with the aurora's light. That is our next destination, the far north, where winter nights are long and the ways of life starkly different. Yet again, let us drift onward into the land of the midnight sun and the flicker of hearths in Viking longhouses. Chapter 5. Frigid Nights Among the Norsemen of the North. Follow the setting sun, further north now, to where daylight has dwindled to a brief pale glow, even at noon. We arrive in the far north, the land of the Vikings. In the deep of winter, the year might be around 900 AD, and we find ourselves at a Norse farmstead by a fjord. Snow lies heavy on the ground, sparkling under a nearly full moon. The cold air is so sharp and crisp that each breath feels like it could freeze in your throat. Our vantage hovers above a long, low building with turf-covered walls, a typical Viking longhouse. Through gaps in the wooden plank roof, tendrils of smoke curl upward, the only sign of life in this frozen darkness. The surrounding countryside is hushed, the pine forest blanketed in snow, the fjord's waters at the shoreline iced over. Wind whistles faintly through the gaps in the timbers. It's a brutal winter night, the kind where a person caught outside unprotected might lose fingers to frostbite or simply slip into hypothermia's sleep. But inside that longhouse, a warm orange glow beckons, and the promise of human companionship offers respite from the deadly cold. Let's enter the Viking longhouse. Immediately you are met with the thick smell of wood smoke, mixed with a medley of other odours: wet wool, cooked meat, and the earthy scent of damp straw. The longhouse interior is one big hall, maybe 20 paces long, supported by timber posts down the middle. A central hearth runs along much of the length, its fires banked low but still emitting heat. Around it, the entire extended household is gathered. Here lives Thora, a hardy Norse farm matriarch, with her husband, their children, an elderly grandmother, and a couple of thralls, slaves, who help on the farm. Even some of the farm's animals, a pair of goats and a few sheep, are brought inside tonight, huddled in a pen at one end of the hall. Their body warmth actually helps raise the temperature a bit, and they'll be safer from wolves in here. Everyone is bundled in layers of fur and wool. Furs are essential. The Northmen learned long ago that animal pelts keep you alive in a way mere woven cloth cannot. Thora herself wears a cloak of thick bear fur over her woolen gown and heavy boots lined with sheepskin. A modern person, used to heated homes and down jackets, would still be shivering here. The indoor temperature, even with the fire, is only modestly above freezing near the walls. People crowd close to the hearth to truly stay warm, taking turns sitting on the benches nearest the flames. The firelight flickers on their faces, ruddy, wind-chapped cheeks, and light eyes that reflect the amber glow. In a corner, the grandmother leads the youngest child in a quiet prayer to the Old Norse gods. Though some in the Viking world have begun converting to Christianity around this time, out here on the farm, they still murmur oaths to Odin and Thor for protection through the night. For supper, they have had stewed reindeer meat and dried fish, party fare to sustain them through the cold. A large iron pot still hangs over part of the fire, simmering the remnants of the stew with root vegetables and herbs. Thora ladles some into a wooden bowl for her husband, who has just come back in after checking the barn doors and feeding the hounds outside. He stomps snow off his fur-lined boots and gratefully wraps his hands around the warm bowl. The stew is thick, greasy, and filling. A modern palate might find it gamey or over-salted, but for these folk, it is delicious sustenance. In these latitudes, diet is heavy on protein and fat. They need the calories to stave off the cold. In summer, they smoked and salted meat in great quantities and brewed ale. Now in winter, they draw on those stores. Tonight, a skin of mead, fermented honey drink, is passed around, and each adult takes a swig, feeling its sweet burn warm their belly. The children chew on strips of dried fish as a snack, as they curl up under a fir on a bench, slowly, falling asleep to the murmurs of the adults. Life in the Viking North is harsh beyond what most of us could tolerate. The cold is the most obvious threat. Without modern insulated houses, the people rely on fire, fur, and closeness to survive winter. Frostbite is a constant risk. Many Vikings carry scars or missing bits of ear or finger from past winters. A modern person transported here would likely be incapacitated by the chill in short order, unused to the constant cold even indoors. But beyond the climate, there are other challenges. The work is unending and often perilous. By day, if it were not winter, This family would be out tending fields of barley or pasturing sheep on the hillsides. Come winter, they must haul wood, repair boats, care for livestock, and keep paths clear of snow. If a howling blizzard comes, and it often does, they might be snowed in for days. Roofs can collapse under heavy snow, and someone has to climb up to push it off. A slip from a roof or a deep cut from an axe in these conditions can be fatal. There is no quick way to get help, no hospital with advanced care. They mostly treat injuries with herbal salves and stoic endurance. If an infection sets in, a limb might have to be amputated, likely by a blacksmith doubling as a makeshift surgeon. It's a world where survival hangs by a thread through the dark winter months. Yet the Norse are not just huddling farmers. They are famed seafarers and warriors as well. One of Thora's older sons, Leif, is absent tonight. He's away on a winter hunting trip with other young men, trying to bring down an elk or perhaps a bear for the village. Last summer, Leif had a more dangerous adventure. He joined a Viking raid westward. The people here often take to their longships when the weather is fair, setting sail across the sea to trade, and sometimes to plunder. Leif returned with stories of distant shores and a few silver coins earned or stolen. Not all of his companions made it back. One was wounded by an arrow in a skirmish in England and died on the voyage home, his body committed to the deep ocean. A modern person thrown into one of these Viking voyages would face terrors on multiple fronts. The voyage itself is a trial. Imagine crossing the rough North Atlantic in an open longboat, soaked by freezing spray, navigating by sun and stars when visible, sleeping under a damp wool blanket with the hard deck as your bed. Seasickness would likely overcome someone not accustomed to the constant rolling and pitching of the ship. The Vikings laugh about it. Even among them, a few green-faced youths always decorate the seas with their vomit on the first days out. But they get their sea legs quickly, or they don't go a Viking again. Then there's the combat. Should you find yourself on a Viking raid, you might witness or partake in brutal fights. The Norse warriors carry iron swords, axes, and spears. Leif's father, old Eric by the fire there, still has a faint battle scar on his cheek from a raid in his youth. If a modern individual, untrained in melee combat and unarmored, were in that fray, they wouldn't last a minute. The sheer adrenaline and fear could cause collapse, aside from the high chance of being struck down by a weapon. Even outside of war, violence is never far in this society. Feuds between families can erupt. A drunken brawl over a slight insult can end in a blood debt. Nomadic raiders or rival clans might ambush isolated farmsteads. Although Norse law codes exist and assemblies called things meet to judge disputes, people often take justice into their own hands, leading to cycles of revenge. A stranger who doesn't know the customs could accidentally offend a local by, say, not respecting seating order at a feast or mishandling a weapon in someone's home, possibly provoking a fight. Being constantly vigilant about honor and insult is second nature to them, but utterly foreign to someone from our Faramafand, time used to more Pacific social norms. However, looking around the fire-lit longhouse, one also sees the warmth of community that sustains these folk. Thora is now gently rocking a cradle where her baby, born just a month ago, finally sleeps after much fussing. She hums a low Norse lullaby, and the other women smile softly. A grey-bearded man, perhaps a neighbor or uncle, begins reciting a saga in a deep voice to entertain those still awake. It's an old tale of heroes and gods, of Sigurd who slew a dragon, and of mighty Thor's adventures in Jotunheim. His voice rises and falls in a captivating rhythm, and even the children stir to listen for a moment, eyes shining in the firelight. Storytelling is a treasured art here. Without books or writing, runes exist, but are not widely used for long texts. History and myth live in memory and spoken word. In this way, knowledge and culture pass down through generations. A modern visitor might be entranced by this oral tradition, or frustrated by the lack of written records. The old man's tale tonight is not just of gods, but of his own youth. He recalls a voyage across the Whale Road, the sea, when he and a band of adventurers sailed westward to a distant island. He speaks of mountains of ice floating in the ocean fog, of a storm that snapped their mast like a twig, and how they rode for days under sleet and rain until finding safe harbor. The hall grows quiet as he describes the eerie green lights, the aurora that guided them at night, and the whale that followed their ship for miles, as if an omen from Ran, the sea goddess. In his deep voice, the mundane and the magical blend. One cannot tell where real memory ends and myth begins, yet everyone listens raptly. Through such stories, the young ones learn courage and caution, and the adults feel the warmth of shared experience binding them together. Certainly, one day in the Viking world would challenge every aspect of a modern person's being: physical endurance, tolerance for discomfort, psychological adjustment to violence, and hierarchy. But as we watch the longhouse dwellers gradually turn in for the night, wrapping themselves in furs on raised plank beds along the walls, we also sense a deep resilience and contentment among them. They know how to survive in this unforgiving environment because they have each other, their traditions, and their hard-won knowledge of nature's ways. A modern outsider would marvel at the resilience it takes to live this life, to endure pain and poverty, yet still laugh, play, and hope. To us, their amusements might seem trivial or their concerns narrow, but within their context, it is rich enough. They know every neighbor's life story, every inch of their fields, every prayer for every season. There is a saying in these parts: we work in our days and pray for our morrows. It captures well how they cope. Through faith and routine, the sky over the village is pricked with countless stars now, sharper and clearer than most of us ever see under modern light pollution. Under this celestial dome, John's village rests. We must take our leave of this dark and dreamy scene, for the night is advancing and our journey is not yet done. As we drift upward, the familiar bell tower and crude roofs shrink below, and we carry with us the lessons of this humble place. If you think you would find it easier living as a Viking jarl or a king in a castle, recall that even the highborn face stern tests of survival. In truth, the medieval world in its entirety was a crucible of endurance. Our final destination lies further west across the ocean, beyond even the known medieval world of the Old World. We will next find ourselves beneath a different set of stars, in a land of vast temples and vibrant markets, the new world of the Americas, on the eve of its own drastic change. Before this long night of history ends, one more journey awaits. Let us now cross the Great Sea and glimpse the heights of the Aztec civilization at dawn, to see why its splendor and harshness would similarly test any time traveler to their limits. Chapter 6: Distant Drums. A dawn in the Aztec Empire. Our journey's final leg carries us across the great ocean to the Americas, many years before European contact. It is early morning in the Valley of Mexico, and the mighty Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan is about to greet the sun. The city, built on an island in Lake Texcoco, is still cloaked in pre-dawn blue. As we drift above, we see causeways connecting the city to the mainland, like long ribbons, and dozens of canoe boats already gliding along the waterways. Tenochtitlan is immense, home to perhaps 200,000 people, making it one of the largest cities in the world at this time, around the year 1500. Its layout is orderly, with canals and streets laid out in a grid. From the center rises the great temple, Templo Mayor, a twin pyramided structure that dominates the skyline. Even at this early hour, torches flicker at its summit. The air is cool and thin, for this lake city stands at a high altitude, and it carries the scent of water lilies from the lake mixed with the faint smoke of cooking fires starting in household courtyards. As the first glimmers of dawn appear over the eastern mountains, the city comes alive. In the main market square at Tlatelolco, the great market district, vendors begin laying out their goods on reed mats. They bring baskets of ripe avocados, tomatoes, cacao beans, bright red chilies, and vanilla pods. Other sellers arrange dyed textiles, featherwork ornaments, shimmering with iridescent quetzal feathers, and obsidian blades that glint razor sharp. A hum of activity grows. By mid-morning, this market will host tens of thousands of people trading and bartering, a vibrant display of the Aztec economic life. But at dawn, it is still relatively calm. A few chinampa, floating garden. Farmers have come punting in on canoes loaded with fresh produce and flowers, their canoes skirting the wooden pilings along the canals. The city's streets are spotless. Groups of sweepers, a respected profession here, diligently clear away yesterday's debris. Unlike many European cities of the era, Tenochtitlan prides itself on cleanliness and order, something that astounded Spanish observers decades later. But other sights would shock and challenge a modern newcomer. From the great temple comes the deep beat of drums. The sun's rim is just peeking up now, and a ceremony is reaching its climax atop the pyramid. We approach cautiously, as unseen observers. Climbing the steep stone steps are white-robed priests, whose long hair is matted with dried blood, signs of their devotion and past rituals. They lead a procession that includes a few trembling captives, war prisoners taken in the flower wars fought by the Aztecs. At the summit stand two shrines, dedicated to the sun god Huitzilopochtli and the rain god Tlaloc. The first rays of sunlight strike the temple, painting it gold and scarlet. At that moment, a priest raises a ceremonial obsidian knife. We know what is coming, an act of sacrificial offering meant to ensure that the sun continues to rise, that the world remains in balance. In a swift motion, a human heart is offered toward the heavens. The drums thunder, conch shells sound a mournful call, and the gathered priests and dignitaries shout in reverence. It is a gruesome spectacle to our eyes, yet to the Aztecs, it is a sacred duty. The lifeblood of the victim is believed to nourish the gods themselves. A line of captives winds below, each awaiting the same fate. By the end of this sunrise ritual, the temple stones will run red, and the sun will shine fully over a city spiritually renewed for the day. For a modern outsider, this is almost unimaginable horror. The brutality and ritualized violence defy contemporary moral compasses. Most of us could not stomach witnessing it. Some might faint or scream, which, if heard, would certainly draw unwanted attention. Surviving in this society would require an extreme compartmentalization of our values, or at least the wisdom to stay far away from the temple precinct on holy days. If the sacrificial rites are the most extreme example, everyday life in the Aztec Empire still presents formidable challenges to a time traveler. The language barrier, as always, looms large. Here the tongue is Nahuatl, and even basic communication would be impossible without guidance. The Aztecs are not accustomed to foreign wanderers. Anyone unfamiliar arriving in the city unannounced would immediately draw suspicion. In fact, they might take you for a spy from an enemy tribe or a supernatural omen. Without an understanding of their complex social rules, such as prostrating oneself before the emperor or not looking nobles in the eye, a modern person could easily give offense and be seized by the city guards. Justice here can be swift and unforgiving. Thieves are often enslaved or sacrificed. Public drunkenness by the young is punishable by death. Disrespect to the gods or the emperor could result in torture. A misstep in this rigid society could see our hypothetical traveler slated for the next sacrificial ceremony, an end that truly means you wouldn't last a day here. Even aside from overt dangers, consider the environmental and health challenges. The valley is high altitude, over 2,000 meters, 7,000 plus feet, and many newcomers historically experienced altitude sickness with headaches or short breath until acclimating. The diet, though nutritious, is very different. Maize is the staple, eaten as tortillas or tamales for every meal, along with beans and squash. A modern person used to processed foods might struggle to adjust to the texture and preparation of these foods, though one might also find them delicious once tried, as they are flavorful and seasoned with spices like chili and cocoa. Water in the city comes from aqueducts and is cleaner than in many medieval cities, but still a different bacterial environment that could upset an unaccustomed stomach. Conversely, the lack of immunity runs both ways. While Europeans brought diseases to the Americas after first contact, a time traveler could also catch unfamiliar tropical ailments here, or if ill, possibly spread something novel. However, in this pre-contact moment, the population is robust, not yet devastated by epidemics. They use herbal remedies for ailments and have a class of healers skilled in treating wounds and fevers with plants from the surrounding forests. The social structure is strict. At the top, the emperor, Huitlatawani, rules by divine right, and beneath him nobles, warriors, priests, commoners, and slaves have their ordained places. A modern visitor would have no place in this hierarchy, a floating anomaly. Likely, one would be treated as a slave or curiosity at best, until proving otherwise. If you appeared physically different, imagine having lighter skin or hair, you might be taken as a sign, perhaps revered as the fair god Quetzalcoatl, or feared as a demon. Either way, you'd be under intense scrutiny. You would have to learn quickly to bow and speak respectfully, to avoid doing anything taboo. For instance, entering certain sacred spaces or touching ritual objects improperly. The city is also very crowded. Houses are small, often made of adobe brick, and whole families live in close quarters, much like in Europe's villages. Privacy is scant, and personal comfort is secondary to communal living. Bathing, however, is notably more common here. The Aztecs enjoy steam baths and regular cleansing, something a modern traveler might appreciate compared to medieval Europe's grime. But stepping into a steam lodge with locals, you'd need to endure high heat and perhaps pungent herbs, not to mention the mixed company if modesty is an issue. Perhaps seeking some tranquility after the intensity of the marketplace, you wander toward the Imperial Botanical Gardens and Zoo. said to be a favorite retreat of the Emperor Moctezuma. There, your modern eyes behold wonders. An aviary with countless brightly colored tropical birds flitting in immense cages among fruiting trees, and ponds teeming with waterfowl and even crocodiles. In shaded enclosures, you glimpse jaguars pacing and mountain lions lounging, as well as deer and tapirs from far-off jungles. This royal menagerie is tended by hundreds of keepers and gardeners who ensure the animals are fed and the gardens kept lush. The air is thick with the perfume of exotic flowers and the calls of unfamiliar creatures. It is at once enchanting and unsettling. Enchanting for the obvious care and curiosity the Aztecs have for the natural world's diversity, and unsettling because you know that many of these animals, like everything in this empire, ultimately serve a purpose in the cosmic order. Some, for example, may be sacrificed to gods or used for their pelts and feathers in ceremonies. Still, for a brief moment, walking on a path of crushed shell under the shade of cocoa trees, you can almost relax and simply marvel at the living mosaic around you. In these gardens, one feels the refinement of Aztec culture, its ability to create pockets of great beauty and peace in the midst of a city so alive with human and divine drama. It strikes you that in any other circumstance, you would love to spend a day here studying the plants and animals unknown to the old world. But alas, lingering as an outsider invites risk, and you have tarried long enough. As twilight falls over the city that night, another side of Tenochtitlan emerges. In a quiet neighborhood far from the main temples, a potter's family settles down to rest. Their adobe home is lit by the soft glow of a pine torch. On a reed mat, the mother gently rocks an infant to sleep while humming a traditional lullaby in Nahuatl. The father, exhausted from shaping clay all day, sits with his older children under the open sky in their small courtyard. Together they gaze at the smoking torchlit top of the great temple, visible in the distance, and at the pattern of stars above, the same stars their ancestors tracked and wove into myths. They share a bowl of atole, a warm maize porridge before bed, the children giggling as their father makes shadows dance on the wall with his hands. Despite the grand sacrifices and imperial pageantry that define their city, for this family, the end of the day is simple and tender. A modern visitor peeking over their low wall might feel a pang of recognition. Here is love and normalcy amidst the alien grandeur. It underscores that even in a civilization capable of great violence and splendor, ordinary people live ordinary lives, caring for their kin and finding moments of peace. This quiet scene is the last image you carry of the Aztec world, not the fierce warrior or the mighty priest, but a mother and father doting on their children under the night sky, hoping to see tomorrow's dawn. As the sun reaches its zenith, the white limestone buildings of Tenochtitlan gleam, and the waters of the lake around the city sparkle with reflected light. We have seen how a person from our world would struggle to last even a single day here. The cultural shocks alone, from witnessing human sacrifices to navigating a market using unfamiliar barter without offending anyone, pose life-threatening perils. And yet, in observing the Aztecs, we notice human commonalities too. Mothers fussing over children, farmers joking as they unload their canoes, youths flirting by the well, priests chanting prayers at dawn, not unlike monks in far-off lands. It reminds us that despite the vast differences in customs, people of every time have sought meaning, sustenance, and connection. Our imaginary journey is nearly at its end. The sun that we followed from the east at the start of our voyage now shines high over the new world, completing its arc. We have traversed continents and cultures, and the world of the Middle Ages, in all its varied forms, has opened its doors to us for a brief glimpse. It's time now to gently withdraw from Tenochtitlan's bustling streets, before our presence is detected by an inquisitive jaguar warrior or a keen-eyed merchant. As we slip away over the lake waters, the midday breeze rippling their surface, we carry with us profound respect for those who lived these difficult lives, and deep gratitude that we can return to the comfort of our own time. Chapter 7: Caravans and Kingdoms Under the Saharan Sky. Our travels now carry us to West Africa, to the edge of the Great Sahara Desert, where a different medieval world unfolds under a sky of liquid fire by day and infinite stars by night. The time is the 14th century, and we join a caravan winding its way toward the legendary city of Timbuktu in the Mali Empire. It is late afternoon when we approach the caravan, a long line of camels plodding over golden dunes, their silhouettes wobbling in the heat haze. The sun is an unforgiving white disk descending in the western sky, and the sand beneath still radiates intense heat from the day. Men in indigo blue turbans, the nomadic Tuareg guides of the caravan, lead the camels by rope. Each beast is laden with precious cargo, sacks of salt, bundles of dried dates, and perhaps a load of gold or ivory. Weary travelers trudge alongside or ride atop swaying saddles, lips cracked and skin burnt from weeks in the desert. The caravan has been on the road for nearly 2 months, trekking from the salt mines of Tagazar in the far north, across hundreds of miles of desert emptiness. Now, mercifully, the Niger River's green fringe and the city of Timbuktu are only a day or two ahead. But a modern newcomer transplanted into this company at this moment would be in dire straits. The heat alone has been enough to kill some less fortunate earlier on the journey. In these climes, midday temperatures can soar above 45 degrees Celsius, 113 degrees Fahrenheit, beneath a cloudless sky. Without acclimatization and expert guidance on conserving water, you'd risk collapse from heat stroke within hours. Indeed, the caravan rests at midday and travels in early morning or late day to avoid the worst heat, a strategy a modern person ignorant of desert ways might not realize until too late. As the sun finally sinks, the sky blooms in hues of orange and purple over the dunes. The caravan halts to make camp for the night. Camels groan as they kneel and are relieved of their burdens. Tuareg attendants tether them in a circle to graze on sparse scrub grass. A small fire is kindled using dried dung for fuel. Wood is too precious in this land. Around the flickering flames, travelers wrap themselves in loose robes that served as sun protection by day and now ward off the night's chill. For indeed, the desert night will become surprisingly cold. They brew strong mint tea in a blackened kettle and pass around small glasses, pouring from high above each cup to aerate the liquid. The sweet, hot tea revives flagging spirits. Sitting among these sun-scorched traders, a modern person might finally find a moment of respite in the cool dusk, but also a host of new discomforts. Fine sand gets everywhere, in your eyes, your ears, gritty between your teeth. There are no tents for common travelers, only the open sky. Scorpions and snakes lurk under rocks. You'd have to shake out your boots each morning carefully. Water is rationed, perhaps just a small skinful for washing and drinking combined. Cleanliness, as we know it is impossible. Everyone carries the layered dust of the road on their skin. If you're finicky about hygiene, or unused to sleeping on the hard ground with only a camel saddle as pillow, this life would test you sorely. Yet, as the stars ignite overhead, more stars than a city dweller has ever seen, a dizzying band of the Milky Way arching from horizon to horizon, a certain serenity descends. The caravan folk begin to sing a low song in Bambara, a lullaby to the camels, and perhaps to themselves. Drums made from hollow gourds provide a gentle rhythm. These people know that tomorrow will be another grueling march, but for now they find solace in community and tradition. One old Malian merchant, with scar patterns on his cheeks and kind eyes, notices our hypothetical outsider shivering a bit in the night breeze. He throws an extra woven blanket over your shoulders and offers a smile. "Dawni dawni," he says softly, slowly, slowly. A reminder that one must be patient and move gradually in this life. Such acts of hospitality are customary here. Travelers in the desert survive by helping one another. Perhaps of all the places we've visited, a foreigner might find some refuge in the generosity of West African hospitality, if only the other hazards were not so overwhelming. By next afternoon, the caravan reaches the outskirts of Timbuktu. The approach is marked by scattered villages of mud brick huts, goats, and cattle grazing on the river's edge, and then cultivated fields of millet and rice. Finally, the fabled city comes into view. Flat-roofed buildings, the color of sand, blending into the landscape, and three great mud mosques with soaring facades and wooden beam stakes, protruding both decorative and used as scaffolding for annual replastering. Among them is the Jingreba Mosque, commissioned by the Emperor Mansa Musa decades earlier, after his famous pilgrimage to Mecca. It stands as a beacon of learning and faith in the Sahel. The caravan's arrival is greeted by curious children who run alongside the camels, and relief from the city's traders who have awaited their salt and goods. Soon, the salt slabs will be hewn apart and bargained for in the market, ounce for ounce traded with gold. Timbuktu at this time is near its zenith, a bustling trade hub and center of Islamic scholarship. It is said that here, books are worth more than gold. Its libraries brim with manuscripts on theology, astronomy, medicine, and law. A modern person stepping into Timbuktu's sandy streets might at first be deceived by the city's modest earthen architecture. But the richness of culture is immediately evident. You see long caravans of donkeys and camels unloading goods, copper from Morocco, fine textiles and horses from the north, cola nuts and slaves from the forests to the south. Blacksmiths clang away at metal tools, potters shape clay water jars, and scribes recline under an acacia tree, copying Quranic verses onto scrolls. The marketplace is shaded by woven mats and teeming with people of many tongues. Soninke, Tuareg, Fulani, Songhai, Arabic, a polyglot empire's crossroads. The smells of spices, pungent cola nut, shea butter, and dried fish mingle in the hot air. In such a diverse crowd, a stranger, like our time traveler, might not stand out by looks alone, depending on their complexion and attire, but any unfamiliar behavior or inability to speak the local languages would quickly draw notice. One could perhaps pretend to be mute to avoid linguistic missteps, but that invites other dangers. Slivers might assume a lone, quiet outsider is a runaway or an easy target. Indeed, the slave trade is active here. One of the commodities sold in Timbuktu's market are captives from wars or raids, destined for transport north. A traveler without obvious status or protectors could, in a worst-case scenario, be kidnapped and sold like chattel. a fate that befell many hapless souls who wandered too far or trusted the wrong guide. The Mali Empire at this time is a place of laws and prosperity, but also strict social stratification. It's an Islamic realm, and although it's generally tolerant of different ethnicities, being a trading empire, it expects public adherence to Islamic norms. 5 times a day, the muezzin's call floats from the mosque minarets, a haunting, beautiful chant that even causes the busy market to pause as many silently pray. If our modern visitor is unfamiliar with Muslim customs, they might inadvertently offend, perhaps by failing to remove shoes when entering a mosque's courtyard, or by drinking water during the daytime fast of Ramadan. Such breaches would range from rude to sacrilegious. Locals might react with anything from scolding to expulsion from the community, or worse, if perceived as blasphemy. Conversion to Islam in the empire is not forced by the sword at this point, but social and commercial life revolve around it. So a non-Muslim is at a distinct disadvantage and subject to suspicion. A quick learner might adopt the outward forms, the polite Assalamu alaikum greeting, the respectful use of the right hand. Only in transactions, the left is considered unclean. The modest dress, but even small mistakes like touching someone's head unwittingly or stepping in front of someone, praying, could provoke anger. The cultural codes are subtle and numerous for an outsider to grasp in short order. On the positive side, a modern visitor might be astonished and delighted by Timbuktu's intellectual life. In the evenings, when the air cools to comfort and the sky turns velvet, the city's scholars gather in courtyards to debate theology and science. Oil lamps flicker over open manuscripts. You might catch fragments of learned discussion, perhaps an elder explaining the movements of the stars, or teaching medicine from the works of Ibn Sina, Avicenna, all in Arabic. This university-like atmosphere is centuries before the Enlightenment of Europe, yet here it flourishes. A lover of knowledge from our time could, in theory, find kindred spirits among these scholars. But language again is a barrier. The learned tongue is Arabic, while daily speech might be Songhai or Tamashek. And then there's the matter of survival. One cannot simply partake in high culture without ensuring basic security and livelihood. Where would our traveller sleep and eat? Perhaps an inn, or as a guest of a friendly host. But inns, in this era, are not plush. One might get a spot on a mat in a crowded room. And food, likely a simple millet porridge with baobab leaf sauce. The stomach of a modern person might rebel at unfamiliar microbes in the water or new spices. Illness like dysentery could strike quickly in such conditions. Without modern medication, a bout of severe diarrhea or malaria, mosquitoes breed along the Niger's marshes, could be fatal within days. West Africa's diseases were notorious. Even much later, European explorers struggled to survive them. A time traveller lacking immunity or proper precautions might not last long even if they avoided all social pitfalls. Night falls on Timbuktu. The desert breeze sweeps through the streets, carrying distant drum rhythms from a wedding celebration in a nearby village. Our sojourn through medieval Africa comes to a close with one final scene. At the edge of town, by the riverside, a small group of griots, traditional storytellers, sit with a family beneath a baobab tree. One griot plucks a quiet melody on a kora, a 21-string harp, while reciting the lineage of his patrons and the history of Sunjata, the great Lion King who founded the Mali Empire. The family members listen, enraptured, soaking in the tales that define who they are. In that moment, Our modern traveller, if still conscious and present, might feel a poignant kinship with these people of another age. Throughout our journey, in every land, we have seen people cherish stories, lean on faith, show kindness to strangers, and endure hardships with courage. The forms differ: samurai and knights, nomads and sailors, peasants and kings, but the human heartbeat is recognizable. And yet, the chasm between their daily realities and ours is vast. As the griot's song fades and the stars over Timbuktu shine bright, we prepare for the final leg of our return to the present. The lessons of this harsh yet vibrant world travel with us, urging us onward to reflection and closure as we step out of history's long night. Chapter 8. Epilogue. Returning home with new eyes. Gradually, our long journey through the tapestry of the past comes to an end. The scenes of medieval life, from the hush of a Japanese temple at twilight, to the bustle of a Chinese rice village at dawn, to the glow of an African caravan camp under the stars, with many places in between, begin to fade like incense smoke in the air. You feel yourself drifting gently upward, away from Timbuktu's baobab shadows, away from Tenochtitlan's pyramids and Norse longhouses, up through the layers of night. The myriad voices we heard, the lullabies, prayers, market cries, and saga songs, blend into a distant, soothing chorus, then quiet to a silence. The darkness around you grows softer, less foreign. A sense of familiarity returns. With a slow, deep breath, you open your eyes and find that you are back in your own time, your own room. The bed beneath you is soft, the air climate controlled to just the right temperature, and all the modern comforts surround you. Perhaps the faint hum of an appliance or the distant whoosh of cars reminds you that this is the 21st century. You have returned home, safe and whole. Take a moment to let that realization sink in. You are safe. The trials we witnessed were but a dream, a journey of the imagination. In your world right now, there is clean water at the turn of a tap. There is likely food in the kitchen enough to satisfy hunger without backbreaking labor in a field from dawn to dusk. If you fall ill tonight, help can be summoned with a phone call, and skilled professionals will come to your aid. A far cry from bleeding or leeching by medieval physicians, or resigned prayers for divine mercy. The spectres of the past, plague and famine, marauders and harsh lords, are, for the most part, kept at bay in our present day. Reflect on that for a gentle moment. How fortunate we are. How extraordinary our mundane luxuries would seem to those who lived in the world we just visited. The bed you lie on with its mattress and pillows, unimaginable softness to a medieval peasant who slept on straw crawling with insects. The fact that you can read these words, or hear them, literacy, was a rare gift reserved for monks, scribes, or nobles in many past cultures. Even the silence of your room is a privilege. In medieval times, nights were filled with the sounds of animals, the snoring of family members huddled in one room, perhaps the alarm bell of a city watch if danger arose. Such peace and privacy were scarce. Our journey has shown us that while the past can appear romantic from afar, knights in shining armor, exotic temples, and heroic sagas, living through those realities was unimaginably difficult for the average person. You truly likely wouldn't last a day in medieval times without your modern conditioning and knowledge. But that realization is not cause for fear. Rather, it can nurture gratitude and empathy. Think of the countless generations of humans who endured those hardships so that, Eventually, the world could progress to the state it is now. Your ancestors, in some era or place, survived infant mortality rates where families lost many children. They survived wars and invasions, toiled in fields or workshops from childhood onward, and faced nature's fury without the shield of modern technology. And yet, they found ways to laugh, to love, to create art and story, as we saw in every chapter of this journey. Their resilience is your heritage. Perhaps as you lay here now, on the cusp of sleep, you recall some vivid image from our travels. The old Chinese farmer gazing at his rice paddies in the morning mist, or the mother in Baghdad whispering a prayer of thanks as her family gathers safely at day's end. Maybe you see the Viking longhouse with embers glowing in the hearth, while outside the aurora dances, or the Aztec parents doting on their little ones beneath the stars, even as a great empire's ceremonies rumble in the distance. These images reassure us that, even in worlds that were harsh beyond our experience, there was human warmth and meaning. People adapted to their circumstances amazingly. What would break a modern person was simply normal to them, not because they felt less pain or fear, but because they cultivated great endurance and strong community bonds. In noticing that, we might carry a piece of their strength with us. If they could face the dark without electricity, we can face our smaller trials. If they could find joy in a simple song or a shared meal, perhaps we too can simplify and appreciate the basics more deeply. Now, as you prepare to drift into your own night's rest, let the lessons of this journey cradle you. Feel the softness of your bed and the secure roof above. No smoke to choke on, no cold wind to bite your skin. Take a slow, easy breath and release any lingering tension. After all, you've traversed thousands of miles and years in your mind. You deserve to relax. In your mind's eye, you might offer a silent thank you to those distant souls who walked the hard roads of history. Thanks to them, you live in a world with medicine, knowledge, and relative safety. The thought is comforting. You are the wildest dreams of those who came before, living with luxuries they couldn't imagine. And in recognizing that, perhaps you also realize that the difficulties of today, the stresses and worries that inevitably come, might be met with a bit more patience and courage, knowing what humanity has overcome. Your eyelids grow heavier now, the images of samurai and caravans and castles fading into a gentle haze. If any fear lingered, perhaps at the thought of those dangers back then, let it melt away. They are in the past, and you are here, in the present, secure. You carry the wisdom of perspective now. The world may not be perfect, but by comparison, it is so much easier in so many ways. You can rest without a sword by your side, without hunger gnawing at your belly, without the howl of wolves or the threat of war at your village gate. Outside, maybe the distant hum of modern life lulls you, a far-off car or the buzz of a street lamp. Each sound is a reminder that you live in a time of comfort. Let that thought be the pillow for your mind. Inhale deeply and exhale slowly, feeling your body sink further into safety. Our journey is complete, and you have returned wiser and more grateful. The medieval world, with all its perils and wonders, is tucked back into the pages of history. Your world, with soft blankets and accessible warmth and instant communication across continents, is here and now, embracing you softly. Allow yourself to let go of any remaining waking thoughts. Know that you are connected across time to the people we met by the unbroken chain of human striving, but blessed to sleep in a bed they could only dream of. With that final comforting realization, you can let your mind float into a peaceful slumber. Tonight, you are home, and all is well. Sleep, as outside the stars wheel gently overhead, the same stars that watched over all those distant lives, now watching over you. You are safe, you are warm, and you can rest deeply, carrying gratitude into your dreams. Good night.